So welcome back to another video today here on my channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I did mention this in a previous video or two. We are going to be sort of trying to start a podcast here on this channel. It's going to be hopefully uploaded 1 to 2 times a week, obviously depending on your feedback and how you guys think it is going. We're going to call this Let's Talk NBA. I think that's a good name. I've actually done one of these in the past. It went okay. Really wasn't feeling it at that time. I think it could be a good thing to do now. Everybody's bored. Obviously the NBA season's not going on. Could be good to start talking about it a little bit, see where we could potentially have some offseason rumors, some free agent signings, stuff like that. So if you guys are in support of this, please let me know down below in the comment section, along with, possibly some other video ideas down below there as well. If this ends up going well and this ends up becoming a full series for me, I'm going to do my best to get this on to Spotify, Apple Music, stuff like that. And then potentially, obviously keep it on YouTube as well. So as you can tell by the title, today we're going to be talking about 3 trades that need to happen this offseason. So before I also get into this video, I do want to mention I haven't done this in a while. This is basically my first time really doing one of these. So I do kind of have a script. So if it sounds like I'm reading off something in these first couple episodes, that's because I am. I honestly am. I'm going to keep it 100 with you. I wrote it like an 8-page script for this. So it's going to be scripted. It's probably not going to be perfect. I don't expect it to be perfect. But today, without further ado, let's look at 3 trades that need to happen this NBA offseason. So all 3 of these trades might be a little controversial to some people, but I think without a doubt this first one right here is going to be the most. Number 1 coming in is going to be John Wall. Now the idea the Washington Wizards could potentially find a trade partner for John Wall should be enticing them no matter what. After signing a $207 million contract extension in the 2017 offseason, the one-time franchise star has significant injury concerns. He's played 73 games over the past 3 NBA seasons, and Washington's front office should do everything in their power to try to trade John Wall. Now, he does have a $207 million contract that runs through the 2023 NBA season. That's not going to be an easy task to move. If we look at some potential teams that could take the risk, there are obviously not going to be a lot. Some that come to mind off the top of my head are going to be the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks. Now, you might ask, why on earth would either of these teams make this trade? Well, we'll start out with Dallas. For them, they haven't really been able to get a third star to pair up with Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. This trade for Dallas would allow them to be almost immediately in contention in what is a very loaded Western Conference, and would take a lot of pressure off of franchise star Luka Doncic. A potential trade between Washington and Dallas could be John Wall and Isaac Bonga for Tim Hardaway Jr., Dwight Powell, and a lottery-protected first-round pick. At one time, I'm in total agreement with this. It would be insane to think a team can get John Wall for what seems like filler players and a potential pick. But obviously those injury concerns and that huge, ginormous contract, there's going to be risk no matter what they end up doing. If we look more towards the New York Knicks, this gets a little bit tricky. New York obviously last summer had some really high expectations. They could possibly end up with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and potentially even Zion Williamson. Obviously went 0 for 3 on those. It makes it even worse that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving went to Brooklyn, obviously in New York, one of the Knicks' biggest rivals. I actually don't know. They might not be the Knicks' biggest rivals, but they're definitely probably up there. So I think at this point, a lot of Knicks fans are probably sitting there saying, what the hell is going on? Why is James Dolan doing nothing? I've seen everything on Twitter. Knicks fans pretty much calling for James Dolan's head. I don't really blame them at all, if we're going to be totally honest. They have not really done much ever since moving on from Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, Carmelo Anthony never got them a championship. That's a whole entire different conversation. But I think John Wall, if they end up trading for John Wall, I think what that's going to do is, one, it's going to be bait for free agency in the 2021 free agency class, because in this 2020 free agency class, pretty sure like DeMar DeRozan headlines it. And I don't really think he's going to be much of a star that you do want to pair up to potentially win a championship, especially on a team with a lot of young guys. So I think trading for John Wall here is definitely worth the risk, in my opinion. At worst, if he doesn't play pretty much every game, which there's a 99% chance he's not going to do that. But as long as he's getting contributing minutes, can contribute on the floor, can contribute off the floor with some leadership. It's a very young team. Obviously, they signed like 18 power forwards last offseason, all of which seem to be veterans. Some have been moved, some have still remained on this team under multi-year deals. But that 2021 free agency class for me is why they need to make this move. John Wall is going to be bait for potential free agents. Giannis is a free agent. Kawhi Leonard's a free agent. Paul George is a free agent. Gordon Hayward's a free agent. There's so many guys out there that literally could look at teams all around and say, what's the best market to play in, and what team has the best potential chance of winning a championship? And I think trading for John Wall, you obviously already have the market there. You're the New York Knicks. If you go out and trade for John Wall, he was once a franchise player. If healthy, he's probably a top 6, 7, 8 point guard in this league. Obviously, the Knicks were unable to come to an agreement with Kristaps Porzingis, which resulted in him requesting a trade, ultimately landing him in Dallas. The Knicks have struck out so many times in free agency, and seriously do not seem to be able to hire what seems like a competent general manager. Yeah, it's just a tough spot for the New York Knicks. In my opinion, they got to make this trade. John Wall's value is not high right now, as I mentioned previously. I think the Knicks could offer a trade package of Bobby Portis, Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., along with a lottery-protected first-round pick, and in return, the Knicks would get John Wall and Mo Wagner. I think this trade makes sense for both sides. Washington does get rid of Wall's risky contract. They acquire 3 young, nice pieces. They're obviously trying to look to go into some sort of rebuild. Not a full-blown rebuild because they're not trading Bradley Beal. At least they should not be trading Bradley Beal if they do end up moving John Wall. And they could also end up with a potential first-round pick. As I mentioned previously, I've said this a couple times now, New York gets a guy that, when healthy, is a borderline franchise player. That enough should be reason for them to go out and make this trade. There's no sitting on your ass. You cannot keep doing this to a giant market. You're going to most likely have a top 5, top 6 pick in this upcoming draft. You got to go out. You got to get an established player that knows what he's doing. Doesn't really know how to win too much, but can provide leadership, can provide development for some young players. Maybe Knicks fans will finally stop calling for James Dolan's head. I think, honestly, this is going to be the best move if I was the New York Knicks. So number 2 here is going to be Chris Paul. After it was clear that Chris Paul and James Harden were not working out together in Houston, Rockets GM Daryl Morey realized that a trade was needed. Much like John Wall, Chris Paul's contract is not an easy one to move. After signing a 4-year, $159 million contract extension with Houston, many around the league thought this could be the worst contract in the NBA. The contract will run through the 2021-2022 NBA season, and Paul will be 36 by the time the contract is over, and making over $44 million that year. Not exactly the deal that many see as a move to contend for years to come. After the Houston Rockets and Oklahoma City Thunder agreed to a trade to send Russell Westbrook to Houston for Chris Paul and what can turn up to 4 first-round picks at the time, the move didn't seem so bad for Oklahoma City because of the 4 possible picks. It was thought that Chris Paul would ride out his time in Oklahoma City or potentially even be bought out to go sign with a contender. However, neither of these situations happened. The Thunder were given less than a 2% chance to make the playoffs this year. When the emergence of young star Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I know I'm butchering his name, I can't pronounce his name for the love of me, or for the love of God, along with great play from Danilo Gallinari, Dennis Schroeder, and Steven Adams, the Thunder currently sit at 40-24 and 5th in the Western Conference. Now, you might be asking, if they're playing so well with CP3 and other stars, why would they trade them? Well, it's simple. Development of young players can only go so far. At some point, Oklahoma City needs to give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a chance of being the franchise piece for this team, and that is not going to happen with Chris Paul there. I get it. He's playing point guard. You really just need to put Dennis Schroeder next to Shai, whatever the hell his name is. SGA. You need to put Dennis Schroeder, who's averaging like 17 points right now, in a seriously good number 2 or 3 options for that Oklahoma City team, next to SGA, who needs to become the franchise star. That is my opinion. So Paul's trade value right now is actually seriously probably as high as it's been since his days in LA. A trade will allow the Thunder to receive some picks back and possibly build a championship roster. Now, they don't need picks, so potentially they could go after some young pieces as well. You're going to be seeing that in my trade in just a second. I know for number 1, I have 2 teams this here as well, but I know number 1, I just stopped talking about them. But again, I think the New York Knicks are a perfect team. If they're unable to land John Wall, I think Chris Paul is a great plan B. For starters, he'll bring a veteran leadership into a young locker room, and a young locker room that definitely needs some leadership. Again, much like the John Wall trade, this move will hopefully calm Knicks fans down and will give the Knicks a head start for 2021 free agency. A potential move could look like this. Oklahoma City sends Chris Paul to New York for Bobby Portis, Dennis Smith Jr., and a second-round pick. This move is also especially attractive for Oklahoma City because it both gives them depth pieces and clears up some salary moving forward. This is personally my favorite. Another potential Chris Paul trade could be with the Miami Heat. The Chris Paul to Miami rumors have been going on for a while now. And if both teams were interested, a potential trade could be Kelly Olynyk, Duncan Robinson, or Tyler Hero. It's got to be one of them. I know Heat fans are going to kill me and say they're both untouchable, but it's got to be one of them. If I personally were a team trading for one of those two, I would want Duncan Robinson. I think he has higher potential. That's just me. Along with a second-round pick. The salaries don't exactly match up, but Miami has almost $35 million coming off their books this offseason, which allow them to take back more than they can give out. So unlike New York, Miami actually does have a stable locker room. So it'd be a little bit of a different scenario if Chris Paul does end up in Miami. Chris Paul wouldn't be traded to Miami so much for leadership, but rather to compete for a championship immediately. A potential big 3 of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Chris Paul is extremely dangerous in my opinion. Along with that, you have role players such as Andre Iguodala, emerging potential all-stars, and Tyler Hero, or I guess if you don't want to trade Duncan Robinson, one of the two, and Kendrick Nunn. And along with any other veterans and role players the Heat signed this offseason, that Heat team is an instant threat in the NBA to anybody, in my opinion, and probably the favorites to win the East and come out of the East. Now, the only negative of this is hindering the development of Kendrick Nunn, who has seemingly emerged out of nowhere. I had not heard of him before this season, and appears to be one of the franchise's stars moving forward. I think this move lets the Heat compete for a championship for a while, and Chris Paul can mentor Kendrick Nunn along the way. If I were Chris Paul, this would want to be where I end up. So yeah, I understand the concern that basically when you trade for a veteran that's under such a bad contract, and you already have a lot of contracts, and a lot of guys you're paying that aren't even on your roster, like the Miami Heat do, there's some obvious concern. Paying a 36-year-old $44 million in the final year of his deal is pretty much not good no matter who it is. Unless your name is LeBron James, it's not going to be good. So, I mean, personally, I think if they don't trade for Chris Paul, Miami does still have a chance to compete for a championship, depending what they do this offseason. Obviously, the trade for Andre Iguodala was a huge one. Looks like it was kind of working out until the NBA season just kind of came to a hiatus, but that is what it is. So I think the Chris Paul move would be worth it. I think that big three is dangerous. You never know what other trades or moves they can make this potential offseason. So that's it for number 2. If we're going to hop in right to number 3 right now, it's going to be Draymond Green. And now this one's also going to be extremely controversial, but I think it's one that needs to be done. The emergence of Eric Pascal has been a surprise to the NBA as a whole. If the 41st pick of the 2019 NBA draft have proved anything, that is the Warriors know how to draft, and I don't think anybody's arguing that. Probably the best drafting team in the NBA. In all likelihood, my opinion, Eric Pascal will be the Warriors' power forward for the future. I don't really think there's any arguing that. He's kind of come out of nowhere and kind of just put on an absolute show. Now, I get it. Steph Curry hasn't been playing. Klay Thompson hasn't been playing. Draymond Green's not a points guy, so Eric Pascal with D'Angelo Russell when he was there were kind of the two. That was kind of it. I don't really know who else was putting up points for that team. I didn't watch a ton of Warriors games. I'm going to be totally honest with you. The amount of times they were on ESPN and TNT just because they, were in the championship the year before, absolutely crazy. But that's not the point of this. I think the days of Draymond Green and Golden State need to be coming to an end. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson will both be returning from injuries at the start of the 2020-2021 season. That is, unless, this NBA season ever picks back up. And they're going to be looking to compete. That's just pretty much obvious. They're two borderline, Steph's a franchise player, Klay's a borderline franchise player, and with a likely top 5 pick coming in as well, there's simply no room for Draymond Green in that court. The emergence of Andrew Wiggins as a third star has seriously been good for him. First overall picks are not supposed to be third options. Let's get that out there. But it's kind of Andrew Wiggins' role at this point. He's making a lot of money. And I personally think if the Warriors can clear some money off their books by trading Draymond Green, it's not a bad move in the slightest. Is he one of the best defensive players in the league? Sure. Is he also an aging veteran who's not getting better in the foreseeable future? That's pretty much for damn sure. So I understand why the Warriors could be hesitant to trade Draymond. With Steph and Klay and most likely what is the final 3 to 5 years of actually being able to compete in a championship within their primes, why would you trade a player that's contributed so much in those previous championship years? I think it's pretty simple. My explanation is it's going to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. If Draymond Green does end up staying a Warrior for the rest of his career, there's no doubt it will hinder the development of Eric Pascal along with whoever they take this year's draft. Trading Draymond this summer will both clear cap space along with letting Pascal develop, and this team also does need to be thinking about the future along with contending for a championship while Steph and Klay are still here. So I understand it's a very narrow and very tricky path to try to be both building for the future with young pieces and competing for a championship. That's one of the harder things to do as an NBA GM. I can't even imagine how difficult that is. It's probably something that no GM wants to be in place, but it's actually not. It's like kind of one of the, let me try to phrase this correctly. It's one of the better, worst places you can be stuck in because it's tough to trade guys, but you're also in such a good spot for the future and you're competing for a championship. So trading Draymond Green, as I mentioned, clearing cap space is going to be crucially important for this team moving forward. At this point, I think my argument's kind of clear. I obviously do want to talk about this with you guys, all 3 of these trades actually, in the comment section below. But first, before we get into that, let's look at some potential trades for Draymond Green. Now, the first team I could possibly think of would be the Portland Trailblazers. Also, I want to make it clear, all these trade rumors and all these trades that I've kind of, put together, they've all come from online. There's at least probably 4 to 5 articles at a minimum on every single one of these trades. So I didn't just pull these teams out of my ass. These are legitimate rumors that are going around. So the Portland Trailblazers, as I mentioned, for starters, Portland not having a good year. I'll give it to them. Carmelo Anthony has been a nice surprise, and Yusuf Nurkic is still battling back from that gruesome leg injury he had last year. But there's really no excuse for not even being in a playoff spot right now with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, Hassan Whiteside, and much more. A trade for Draymond Green will allow them to get a much-needed defensive front court presence. This trade also gives them a player alongside Dame and CJ that can both be a ball handler and facilitate the basketball. I think it's safe to say, yeah, the Zach Collins experiment in Portland is probably not working out. There's no getting out of the salary cap hell that Portland's in right now. So Draymond Green, basically there's no downside is what I'm trying to say. He's only going to increase their chances at contending for a championship. And finally, Draymond Green does bring a winning locker room presence to Portland, which I might add, yeah, not really a big thing going on with that current roster. So I think if the Trailblazers were to offer the Warriors a trade for Draymond, it would look something like this. Zach Collins, Anthony Simmons, or Simons, however the hell you say it, and a second-round pick should get it done, in my opinion. Draymond Green's value is pretty much as low as it's ever been right now. Two young guys in Collins and Simons going back. I think that's all the Warriors should really need. I think that's honestly perfect. If you do a trade like that, it's a win-win. You get the young pieces for Golden State they're probably looking for going forward. It clears up some cap space for them, and it still allows Steph, Clay, Andrew Wiggins, Eric Pascal, whoever the hell they take for in the probably top 3 pick in the NBA draft. In my opinion, it should be James Wiseman. That would just be a crazy starting 5, but that's not really the point going forward. So there were rumors both last offseason and this past offseason that Portland was also very interested in Kevin Love. And I think if that's no longer an option, Draymond is a very second solid option. I would personally rather trade for Kevin Love than Draymond Green at this point. I know the contract's worse. I think he's a couple years older. That's not really my main concern, though. I think it's just more the contract going forward and what type of player and what they're going to kind of bring to a team. I would still take Kevin Love, but I think, as I mentioned, Draymond Green's a very second solid option. And I know I mentioned this before. We're going to hop into trade number 2 right now for Draymond Green. I hate reusing teams, but I honestly think I did kind of like the better fit for like the second one both times. And I think the Miami Heat are honestly a really good fit for them. Their opportunity for this current core is a lot shorter than I think some people realize. Jimmy Butler, his window is going to be open for a decent while. But guys like Andre Iguodala moving forward are key pieces of championship teams. The Warriors have showed you that in years prior. And he's what, 35, 34 years old at this point? I think Draymond Green is a very solid option. If Miami is interested in Draymond Green, they're going to be for kind of similar reasons to Chris Paul. For starters, Draymond Green can bring a ton of leadership alongside Jimmy Butler and Andre Iguodala in Miami's locker room. Draymond's won multiple championships playing alongside Andre Iguodala, and it's clear that they have chemistry together. Besides the fact that there's a 0% chance that Miami actually will win a championship with Myers Leonard in your starting lineup. I know he started like 50 games at this point. It's just absolutely crazy to me that I get it. There's nobody else they can really start right now, but it's not happening. They need to move Bam Adebayo back to the starting center spot. Their starting 5 basically would look something like this. I would start Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Bam Adebayo. I think without a doubt that does put them as the top seed in the Eastern Conference. That would be my personal pick to win the Eastern Conference. And now we gotta kind of get into what a trade might look like. In my opinion, it would be Tyler Hero, Kelly Olynyk, Keezy Okpala, and a first-round pick. So that's a decent amount of value, but it's really not if you kind of look at it. Kelly Olynyk is a role player at best. He's a decently overpaid role player, in my opinion. Keezy Okpala, he's a young guy. He's kind of a prospect, but ultimately he's probably not really going to do anything in the NBA. And then Tyler Hero is, it's either Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson. One of them's got to go. As I mentioned, I'd rather have Duncan Robinson. I think trading for Draymond Green, you should probably get the worst of those two players. I think Duncan Robinson's better. If you disagree with me, that's totally fine. But one of those two has got to go. And I know, I get it. You don't want to trade either one of them. But let me reiterate something. Tyler Hero started 6 games. 6. I think Duncan Robinson is going to be a better player. You can call it a hot take. You can really call it whatever you want. But there's simply no way to trade for Draymond Green unless you trade one of those two players. So, as I mentioned previously, this trade will no doubt make Miami the favorite, if not the best team in the Eastern Conference. So, those are kind of my 3 trades. This was kind of the first episode here of Let's Talk NBA. Again, as I mentioned previously, I know it sounded super scripted. Well, that's because it was. Simply was. I free talked a lot, but I ended up going on script for a decent amount of it. But still, I know it's going to sound like that. I obviously need to get better. It is what it is. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Do me a favor. Please leave a like down below in this video. It would mean a lot to me. If you guys are new, please make sure to subscribe. Now, here's the important part. Give me some ideas for videos. I know the NBA season's not going on. I get it. I understand that. It's tough. There's not much to talk about. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about moving forward as well, but I think if we get a good compilation of comments there down below, I think we can probably come to something. So if you see something you like down below in the comment section, please just leave a like on it. Say, comment underneath that one. Say, please do this, Massa. I think it would be a great idea. Along with my Twitter DMs are always open, so if you are interested in letting me know what you think I should do there, feel free. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are new, please make sure to subscribe. I think these trades are all going to be key. I think at least probably one of them will happen. I don't know if all three are going to happen, but I think all three should happen. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.